Good evening students. Today I am going to discuss about the one more important part of the cell, that is called cell membrane. How the cell membrane is arranged in the cell and what are their functions, everything I will discuss in this video. Okay, this is my 8th video. See, plasma membrane. The plasma membrane is also called as another name. Another name of the plasma membrane is called cell membrane. See, both are same. Plasma membrane and cell membrane both are same. So, this cell membrane or plasma membrane is discovered when the electron microscope, after invention of the electron microscope, that period of the time only the scientists they find out the plasma membrane. Before, the plasma membrane is not identified before the 1950. After 1950 only the scientists find out the plasma membrane. What is the reason means? It is clearly visible in electron microscope. So that is the reason. Okay, coming to the plasma membrane, I draw the diagram here. For suppose this is one eukaryotic cell. So in the eukaryotic cell, it consists of one membrane is surrounded by the eukaryotic cell. So this membrane is called plasma membrane. Plasma membrane. See here, plasma membrane is a single membrane. Remember, plasma membrane is a single membrane, but it consists of lipid bilayer. That means two layers of the lipids, they are arranged on the plasma membrane. See how the lipid bilayers are arranged on the plasma membrane. So plasma membrane is a single membrane. So it is a single. But this single membrane is made up of two layers. Remember that. So what are the two layers means? I will draw some portion of the plasma membrane. How the lipids they are forms in the plasma membrane. Now I will draw here. See here the lipid bilayers. Some of the lipids they are arranged on the plasma membrane in a bilayer, as a bilayer. See here. See, this kind of arrangement which is present in the plasma membrane, it is called lipid bilayer. Remember, this is called what? Lipid bilayer. See, this part, outer layer and inner layer, both are two layers which is present on the plasma membrane. So they are lipid bilayer. Bi means what? Two layers. So in between the lipid bilayers some proteins are present here like this. For suppose it is one type of protein. After that again a lipid bilayer. Some of the lipid bilayer. See, the lipid bilayer consists of, remember, polar head and tail. See, I will draw. For suppose this is one lipid molecule, and this lipid molecule having two portions. So one is polar head. This is called what? Polar head. And these two parts are called tail. Polar head and tail, remember. So like this is one outer layer, this is inner layer. Two lipid bilayers are present. So this lipid bilayer is also called phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid bilayer. So phospholipid bilayer. Okay, in between the lipid bilayers some of the proteins are present here. See, different types of proteins. See, one more type of protein. This is one type of protein. After that, again they consist of the lipids, like this. Then again some other proteins are also present here. See, these kind of proteins are also present in the plasma membrane. Already you know, inside of the plasma membrane here, fully filled with one fluid. What is the name of this fluid? Cytoplasm. Remember, cytoplasm. And also outside of the plasma membrane, that means outside of the cell, it also having some fluid. When we observe the outside of the cell, it is also having some fluid. So inside of the plasma membrane one type of fluid is present. This is called what? Cytoplasm. Like that, the outside of the plasma membrane is also, it consists of one more fluid, that is called interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid. See, the proteins are present in between the plasma membrane as well as outside of the plasma membrane. Here also some proteins are present. Outside of the plasma membrane, that means interstitial fluid also having plasma membrane, as well as among the plasma membrane or in between the plasma membrane is also having some proteins. Here proteins are very important function carried out in the plasma membrane. Okay, now what is the importance of proteins which are arranged in the plasma membrane, and what is the function of the lipid bilayer? Those functions now I will discuss. See, here the plasma membrane is which type of membrane means they have one specialized character. What kind of character? Already you know very well. If you take one plant cell, for suppose this is one plant cell, the outermost membrane of the plant cell is called cell wall, and innermost membrane is called plasma membrane. Remember this. The cell wall is it allows all substances into the cell. Remember, the cell wall, it allows all substances into the cell. But the plasma membrane, it does not allow the all substances into the cell. Which substances are required? Such substances only it allows into inside of the cytoplasm. This and all cytoplasm. So for that reason here plasma membrane is a selectively permeable membrane. Selectively permeable membrane. Remember, plasma membrane is a selectively permeable. Selectively, the selected substances permeable allows into the inside of the cell. So it allows only certain substances into the cell. For that reason it is called selectively permeable membrane. Okay, coming to here, how the materials or ions or water substances are transported into inside of the cell as well as outside of the cell. That is important. See here, some of the substances, for example oxygen and carbon dioxide. See, when the cell require oxygen during the cellular respiration, so if the cell is participate in cellular respiration, it needs oxygen. So when the oxygen, it will be coming from the blood vessel. Already you know very well here the blood vessel. For suppose this is one blood vessel. Inside of the blood vessel consists of blood. So in the blood, the RBC cell, it binds the oxygen, and this oxygen is diffuses into the, see, the oxygen, and this oxygen is diffuses. Suppose this and all oxygen. The oxygen is diffuses into the inside of the cell like cytoplasm. So why they have no any help? Directly by the process of simple diffusion, the oxygen is able to transport from the blood vessel into inside of the cytoplasm. So this kind of movement of oxygen is called simple diffusion. There is no use of any kind of energy. So once the oxygen is enters into the cytoplasm or inside of the cell, so this is called oxygen. So here already the glucose is present inside of the cell. The glucose, the oxygen is combined with glucose. The oxygen is combined with glucose. Then finally it produces the ATP molecule. ATP means energy. So this process is called cellular respiration. Okay now students, this process is called what? Cellular respiration. For cellular respiration purpose, how the oxygen is enters into the inside of the cell means by the process of simple diffusion. Remember that. Okay, once the cellular respiration will completed in inside of the cell, then what will happen here? The carbon dioxide is also released. So after completion of the cellular respiration, what will happen here? CO2 is released. So this CO2 is, it will be sent into outside through the in between the lipid bilayer into outside of the cell. Into outside of the cell. See, you have to remember one thing here. During the cellular respiration, the entry of oxygen and the release of carbon dioxide, both activities are carried out by the simple diffusion. Remember. So here there is no help, there is no need of proteins for this kind of transportation. Okay. Now some of the water molecules, for suppose the cell needs some water molecules. So such kind of water molecules, how they are enters into the cell. See here, one specialized protein is present here. So this protein is called channel protein. This protein name is called channel protein. So this is called a channel protein. See, this kind of protein which is present in between the lipid bilayer, this protein is called what? Channel protein. So this channel protein is made up of 8 molecules, remember. So it is made up of 8 molecules. So this is one type of molecule, and this is another type of molecule. Like that, overall this channel protein is made up of 8 molecules. So what is the name of this protein? Channel protein. Okay, this channel protein is made up of 8 molecules, remember. These 8 molecules, they form as a channel. They form as a channel. For suppose, if the cell requires the water, H2O, the H2O which is present in a interstitial fluid, this and all interstitial fluid. So the water which is present in the interstitial fluid, it will be enters into the channel protein. The water enters into the channel proteins. Then here from the channel proteins into inside of the cytoplasm, the water reaches into inside of the cytoplasm. So this kind of water exchange, sometimes the extra water present in the inside of the cytoplasm, that water is also transport through the channel protein into outside of the cell. So the water transportation inside or outside, inside of the cell or outside of the cell. So both process it will be helpful for the channel proteins. Remember, see here 8 channels, 8 molecules are they forms as a 8 type of channels. Through these 8 type of channels, the water move in inside or outside. So that is the use of channel protein. So then coming to the another type of protein. See, this is called carrier protein. So this kind of protein is called carrier protein. So what is the function of carrier protein? This is called carrier protein. What is the function of this carrier protein means? For suppose it collects some substances from the interstitial fluid. Some of the substances are collected by the channel proteins, and these channel protein, it starts to rotate into inside of the cytoplasm. See, the same channel protein, it collect one substance, then this channel protein, it rotates towards the cytoplasm. Then what will happen? This substance will releases into the cytoplasm of the cell. Like that, if any substance is sent into outside, from the cytoplasm into outside, that time also it collect the substance from the cytoplasm, again it will rotate. So the carrier proteins, they show the rotational movement. With the help of rotational movement, they carry some substances into inside of the cell as well as send outside of the cell. So that is the function of the carrier protein. Then some of the other type of proteins are also present here. See, for suppose here some of the proteins are present. See, these kind of proteins which are present in the plasma membrane, these kind of proteins are called sodium potassium pumping proteins. So sodium Na plus comma K plus, sodium comma potassium pump, they are called pump, or they pumping the some of the proteins, they receive some sodium and potassium ions either inside or outside. You have to remember one thing, in the inside of the cytoplasm, they consist of rich amount of potassium. Remember, compared to the interstitial fluid, this is all what interstitial fluid, that is means the fluid which is present in the outside of the cell, interstitial fluid. When compare the potassium ions richly embedded in the inside of the cytoplasm than the interstitial fluid, remember that. So in the inside of the cell, the potassium is a most abundant ion, remember that. So mostly some of the potassium ions which are present in the interstitial fluid, they are transferring to the inside of the cytoplasm, inside of the cell, through this protein, like this. This protein is called sodium potassium pump, sodium potassium pumping proteins. So this is the some proteins, and some of the other proteins are also present in between the plasma membrane. These are called as a integral proteins. Integral proteins. Why these are called integral proteins? They are exactly present between the interstitial fluid and also cytoplasm. So these are called integral proteins. Like this, the proteins, they helpful the transfer of substances in inside of the cell or outside of the cell. Okay, here some of the proteins, they consist of some arrangements. For suppose some of the proteins, they consist of some carbohydrates here. See, this protein consists of some carbohydrates here. So the carbohydrates containing proteins are called glycoproteins. Remember, glycoproteins. What is the meaning of glyco? Carbohydrate. Glyco means what? Carbohydrates. The proteins which consist the carbohydrate, such kind of proteins are called glycoprotein. So the cell membrane consists of glycoprotein, as well as, see here, some of the lipid bilayers. Suppose this is lipid. So this lipid molecule, it consists of some kind of proteins. So here this is lipid. The lipid consists of some carbohydrates. This also carbohydrates. So the lipid which consists of carbohydrate, such kind of lipids are called glycolipids. These are called what? Glycolipids. Remember that. The cell membrane or plasma membrane, it consists of glycolipids and glycoproteins. What is glycoproteins? The proteins which consist of carbohydrates, such kind of proteins are called glycoproteins. What is glycolipids? The lipid which consists of carbohydrates, such kind of lipids are called glycolipids. Okay, so this is the arrangement of the plasma membrane, how the water will enter and how the oxygen and carbon dioxide come and out of the cell. Like this movement will take place. This whole transportation, the cell membrane transportation is also divided into some important types. See, now coming to the what type of transportation seen in the plasma membrane. Okay students, if you want to this diagram, you will take a screenshot. Okay. Okay. Here some portion I will rub here. See, transport across plasma membrane. Transport across plasma membrane. See, already we discussed actually this and all transportation is not similar. They have some variation. So what are the variation? What type of transportation seen in the plasma membrane? See here the transportation of substances through the plasma membrane is mainly two types. What are they? One is passive transport. Passive transport. And second one is active transport. The transportation of the substances through the plasma membrane is classified into two types. What are they? Passive transport and active transport. First we are going to discuss what is passive transport. Passive means there is no utilize of ATP. That means no use of ATP. That means no use of ATP. That means for this transportation, the substances they are not using the ATP. So without any energy, directly the substances are move inside the cell or outside the cell. Such kind of transport is called passive transport. For example, see here, oxygen enter into the cell, carbon dioxide released into the cell. So these two substances they are not using any energy to entry of inside the cell to exit the outside the cell. So such kind of transportation is called passive transport. Example, oxygen comma carbon dioxide. But how they enter inside the cell, how they exit from cell into outside? By one process, that is called along the concentration gradient. Concentration gradient. So what is concentration gradient means? For suppose in the outside of the cell consists of rich amount of oxygen, then the oxygen is diffuses into the inside of the cell. So there is no utilization of ATP. So this kind of process through the plasma membrane, when the high concentration oxygen it passing from the blood vessel into or blood into the inside of the cell through the plasma membrane, this process is called osmosis. Remember, through the osmosis process, the high concentration oxygen molecule they enters into the low concentration oxygen which is present in the cell. Here oxygen concentration is low before the cellular respiration. Like this, this process is called what? Osmosis. The same like after completion of cellular respiration, what will happen? The carbon dioxide is rich in the cytoplasm. Then compared to the outside of the cell, then it again come out through the plasma membrane into outside by the osmosis, or also it is a simple diffusion. Simple diffusion. Okay, this is called passive transport. Then this passive transport is not a single. It is also divided into two types. It is also divided into two types. What are they? One is simple diffusion. Simple diffusion. Second one, facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion. Okay, understood? The passive transport is not a single. Again, it two types. What are they? One is simple diffusion. Another one is facilitated diffusion. So what is the simple diffusion means? The oxygen and carbon dioxide both are oxygen enter into the cell, carbon dioxide send out into the cell. So this kind of process is called simple diffusion. So transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, what about facilitated diffusion? So the facilitated diffusion, it takes some proteins help here. What kind of proteins means? One is called channel protein. Channel protein. Second one is called carrier protein. See, already we discussed these two types of proteins. The substances they are moving, some substances they are moving from the carrier proteins into inside, from inside into through the carrier protein into outside, like that. See here also water it will be enters into the cell through the channel protein. From the channel protein into again water come out from the cell into outside. So the substances they are moving through the proteins. Which type of proteins? Two types of proteins. What are they? One is carrier protein, another one is channel protein. See, from the carrier protein, some substances they carry some substances after the carrier protein, it rotates towards the cytoplasm. Then it releases into cytoplasm. Like that. If any substance send it to outside, again the carrier protein it carry the some substance, again it rotates towards the interstitial fluid. Like that that is called carrier protein. Then channel protein means the water it will be passes from outside of the cell or inside of the cell. So from outside to inside or inside to outside through the 8 channel molecules. These 8 channels they are made up of 8 molecules. Remember that 8 channels are made up of 8 molecules. So this is the information about the passive transport. For this transport, there is no utilizing the ATP, remember. Okay, coming to the active transport. In the active transport, it needs ATP. It needs ATP for transportation of substances. For example, where means already I will draw here sodium potassium pump. See, this is one type of protein here, like this. This protein is called what? Sodium potassium pump. So sodium potassium pump. So this is one kind of protein. So when the potassium ion which is present in outside of the cell or interstitial fluid, when it passes into inside of the cell, it use ATP molecule. Remember, it use the ATP molecule. Then it will be passes into inside of the cell. Same like that, some sodium ions they are sent out from cell into outside. Here this also use one ATP molecule. So ATP means what? Energy. So with the help of ATP molecules, the ions they are passing inside the cell or outside the cell. Such kind of process is called what? Active transport. For example, sodium and potassium ions. Remember that. Okay, the whole structure of the plasma membrane is also given one name by the two scientists. Who are they? Means Singer and Nicholson. The scientists Singer and Nicholson, both scientists, they proposed one name. They given one name to the plasma membrane. So what is the name? Means plasma membrane is a fluid mosaic model. Fluid mosaic model. Who proposed this? Two scientists, Singer and Nicholson. They proposed that a plasma membrane is also called fluid mosaic model. Why they are called this is a fluid mosaic model means because here there are so many types of proteins are present on the lipid bilayer. What are the proteins? Integral proteins, channel proteins, carrier proteins and sodium potassium pumping proteins. These all proteins, they are bobbing on the lipid bilayer. In between the lipid bilayer, they are bobbing like waves. So the proteins are bobbing in between the lipid bilayer. For that reason, they called the plasma membrane is a fluid mosaic model. Remember that. Why plasma membrane is fluid mosaic model means the proteins which are present in the lipid bilayer, they are alwaysly moved. They are alwaysly moving. Moving means just they are bobbing. So for that reason, this membrane is called fluid mosaic membrane. Why it is called fluid means see inside of the, see here in the plasma membrane some cholesterol is present here. See, this is called, for suppose here, this is called what? Cholesterol. The cholesterol is also called as a steroids. Steroids means already we discussed in previous class, lipids. So the lipids consist of more fluidity. So it provides the more fluidity to the cell or cell membrane. For that reason it is a fluid mosaic model. And also these kind of lipids which are present on the plasma membrane, see they are majorly the lipid. See, this is called lipid bilayer. If you take one lipid molecule, for suppose this is one lipid molecule. So they consist of polar head, and these are called what? Tail. See, all types of lipid molecules, they are not arranged same like this. Some of them only they are tightly packed. See, I will draw here. These are the some lipid molecules which are arranged on the plasma membrane. They are arranged as a tightly packed. They are tightly packed. Tightly packed. So this tightly packed lipids, they have less fluidity. Remember this. This type of lipids have less fluidity. But some of the other lipids, see one more type of lipid, their tail is arranges look like this, like this. So in between this they have some gap. In this gap they filled more fluid here. See, compared to there is no space, a little bit space only in between the tails. See here, they consist of more space. For that reason, they filled more fluid. So this kind of lipids having more fluidity, more fluidity. Okay, now remember students, which type of lipids have more fluidity, which type of lipids have less fluidity means the lipid molecules which are packed tightly, such kind of lipids have less fluidity, but between the tail they have no space, a little bit space only. Here only the lipids, the fluid is stored, but compared to other type of lipids, see this much of gap is there, so they filled more fluid here. For that reason this kind of lipids have more fluidity. So this is the complete information of plasma membrane. ఓకే స్టూడెంట్, మీకు అర్థమైంది అనుకుంటాను. మీకు ఈ వీడియో నచ్చినట్లయితే ఖచ్చితంగా లైక్ చేయండి, అట్లానే మీ ఫ్రెండ్స్కి మీ బంధువులకు కూడా షేర్ చేయండి. అట్లానే ద నెక్స్ట్ టాపిక్, ద నెక్స్ట్ సెల్ ఆర్గానెల్ tomorrow I will discuss. Okay, thank you students.